Good evening and happy Halloween. All right, seriously, what if I did this entire video as Count Dracula? I'm not going to put you guys through that, and I know that tonight is trick or treat for many of you, so I apologize that you have homework tonight, but I'm going to make this really, really fast. And to be honest, you have 20 minutes tomorrow morning during plus time that you could do this. Okay, so first things first, you guys need to make sure you have your foldable out, and we're going to start at the bottom where it says slope is. So slope is, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, is a rate written as a fraction showing the change in y over the change in x. So this little symbol here, this triangle, it's called a delta. But what that means is change. So it's a faster way than writing change in. So if I can find how my y value changes and put that over how my x value is changing, then I have determined the slope of the situation. Okay, so here's our first example here, and this is what we did in class today, finding slope from a graph. Now, many of you guys are probably at the end of this going to think that this is the easiest way to find slope because all it does is involve counting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to find a point that goes exactly through an intersection here. So I see one here, and I also see one here. Now, there are more. I typically try to find two that are right next to each other, that are closest together, because if I did this one down here and this one up here, then I'm going to have to reduce my slopes. If I find the 2 points that are closest to each other, then I'm never going to have to reduce a fraction. And I know how much many of you hate to reduce. Okay, so my first thing I want to do is I want to find the change in the y values. So I'm going to use my y-axis first. So I'm going to count, and I'm counting down 1, 2, 3. Keep in mind that down is represented by a negative number, so our y is actually -3. Okay, so now I need to find the difference in my x values. So here was my y, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to do my y, and I'm going to change colors here just so you guys can see that better. So now I need to count over, and I'm going to go over 1, 2. And I went to the right, and to the right is going toward positive numbers. So that's going to be a +2. So the slope of this graph shows -3, 2. And what that means is that every time my y value changes -3, my x value is going to change by +2. It's a rate. It's going to happen over and over again. I could do it again here between the next 2 points. So let's just look at that. So I can go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and to the right 2. Those words for every are going to be very, very important with slope. For every time I go down 3, I go to the right 2. And those are really our only notes on finding slope from a graph. It's just counting. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at finding slope from a table, which is something else that we did today. Now, when we're finding slope from a table, our main goal is to find the pattern between y and the pattern between x. So our patterns are going up and down, not horizontally. So since the y value is what comes first in my fraction, I'm going to start there. So I see that from going to 6 to 2, I am subtracting 4. Okay, then to go from 2 to -2, I'm subtracting 4. Okay, now I can double check that in my calculator, but I can also just count down. So to go from 2 to -2, I go 1, 0, -1, -2. So I counted down 4, which is what this could also mean because negative means down. And then to go from -2 to -4, again, I count down by 4. Okay, so that means the top of my fraction, the amount that y is changing every time, is by -4. Okay, so now to find slope, I have to come down here and do the change in x piece. So to get from -1 to 0, I'm counting up by 1. So it's going to be +1. To get from 0 to 1, again, I'm going +1. And to get from 1 to 2, I'm going up by 1. If you're ever not exactly sure what you're counting by, then you can just subtract the two numbers to find what you're counting by, because 6 minus 2, I'm sorry, Yeah, so 2 minus 6 would be negative 4, negative 2 minus 2 would be negative 4, and negative 6 minus 2 would be negative 4. Just make sure that when your numbers are counting down, they are negative, and when your numbers are counting up, they are positive. So that's something you guys might have to take a break and pause for after you do your subtraction. Because if you did 6 minus 2, you would have gotten positive 4. But we're counting down, so it needs to become a negative. So my x value is a 1, so my slope is negative 4, 1. And what that means is every time my y decreases by 4, my x increases by 1. If we think of that in terms of the graph, that means every time my y goes down by 4, my x would go to the right 1. Okay, that's all we got for today's lesson. Hopefully you guys went ahead and filled out your notes with me, and have a great time tonight at Trick or Treat or whatever your plans are. Or if this is Tuesday morning, then thank you for getting this done. And I will see you guys in a little bit.